Welcome back to this multi-part series on responsive web development using CSS Flexbox. At the end of the last part of the series, I did say I was going to cover rows versus columns, but I completely forgot about alignment. And now this is probably the main feature in Flexbox, so whoops on my part. So let's talk about aligning items like these that you can see on the screen, both horizontally and vertically within a Flexbox. Let's take a quick look at the markup for this row-based layout with 3 columns. So we have a container, then a div for each column. Simple. The container has a display flex on it, so it is a flexbox. It's 90% width, which makes it responsive, and as you can see, it's obviously got a border. Now, each of the columns has its own height. The middle one is the highest with a height of 400 pixels, and this gives the flexbox its height. The flexbox will grow in height to that of the tallest column. Now, as you can see, the columns are squished to the left-hand side, as this is the default alignment for a row, everything next to each other without any space starting at the left. So let's go ahead and add some spacing. When it comes to alignment, a flexbox has 2 axes. The main axis and the cross axis. For a row layout such as this, the main axis is horizontal. What we call the cross axis is perpendicular to the main axis, so in this case, it's vertical. We'll start with how to align items across the main axis, so horizontally for a row. Now, you've actually done this before when we used the justify content property to align the columns in our web page mockup. So we're just going to add justify content, space between is the value, space hyphen between to the container. And like we saw previously, all of the free space in the container gets distributed between the columns. Another alternative value to this is space hyphen around. Now this takes all of the free space and divides it evenly between the columns, with them each getting half to the left and half to the right. It's almost like we're using the free space as evenly sized left and right margin for each column. Now this is why there's a double space between 2 columns compared to the space between the column and the container. So this space here to the left of the column is also here to the right of the first column, then here for the left side of the second column, and so on and so on. Also, this is responsive, so the space changes width as the page resizes. This is because the container is 90% of the page's width, and as its absolute measurement changes, so does the number of pixels of free space to be distributed. Finally, there is space hyphen evenly. This distributes the free space evenly in each gap between the elements. So the gap between the container and the first column is the same as the gap between the first and second columns, and so on and so on. So main axis alignment is achieved by using justify content, which defines how free space along this axis is distributed. Note I use the term main axis, not horizontal axis, because as you'll see later, if this was a column-based layout, justify content would be working vertically, not horizontally. This is why we have the concept of main versus cross axis when working with Flexbox. This confuses many people. Hopefully now you won't be one of them. Finally, we come to alignment along the cross axis, which since this is a row is the vertical axis. This is done using the align-items property. The default for this property, which the Flexbox currently has, is stretch. And we can see what stretch does if we take the height off the first column. You may expect this to collapse the column so it's just big enough for the text, but you'd be wrong. As you can see, instead it stretches the column, making it fill the entire height of the container. So stretch is the default, but it only really does anything to columns if no height is given. Now, the height of the flexbox is currently being defined by the height of the middle column. If we take away the height from all of the columns, they will now shrink to be only the height of the container. Next we have a value of flex-start. This aligns the columns to the top of the flexbox. Now at first it may seem like this is the same as stretch. However, if we take away the height from the first column, we will be able to see the difference. It's now only as big as its content, not stretched to fill the entire height of the container. There's also the opposite of this, which is flex end, and this does basically the exact opposite thing, so aligns all of the columns to the bottom of the container instead of the top. Next, we have center. As you can guess, it centers all of the items along the middle of the container. Now this is a godsend because vertical centering in CSS used to be a complete nightmare, but no more. The final one is quite interesting. If we set align items to baseline, at first it looks just like flex start. However, if we go ahead and we add some padding to the top of the first column, we can see what it does. See, now we can see what it does. It aligns the items so the top of their content lines up. One final trick before I go. You can override the container setting for individual items. So we're going to set the container align items to be flex start. Then we're going to go to the CSS for just the third column, and we want to move this to the bottom. So we're going to add a property which is called align-self, and we set it to be flex end. As you can see, it's overridden for just this single column. I'll concede that alignment in Flexbox is not the most riveting of topics in all of web development, but it is really useful, and you'll no doubt use it a lot when doing any front-end development. So catch my next video in which I really do talk about column versus row layouts this time. As always, please like the video if you enjoyed it. Comment to ask any questions, I'll answer them, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you do subscribe, remember to click the bell-shaped icon next to the subscribe button, otherwise you will not be notified as I release new videos. See you next time.